lovely to see so many people chatting in such a lively and friendly way with each other. But we do have to go on with the service. So we have some good news. A judge largely barred ICE agents from making arrests in immigration courts in New York City, putting an abrupt halt to a policy that emerged last year as the centerpiece of the Trump administration's immigration crackdown in Manhattan. So, the U.S. Senate advanced a war powers resolution to end the Iran conflict unless Trump obtains congressional authorization, marking a rare rebuke 80 days after hostilities began. And finally, April was the first month when wind and solar combined to produce more electricity worldwide than natural gas did. Huge deal. And now, Reverend Kirk will give us our chalice lighting.
Thank you, Nancy. Good morning, Accotink. As Nancy shared, my name is Reverend Kirk Freeman. My pronouns are he and him. And as I tell my folks at Davies, you're welcome to call me Reverend Kirk, Pastor Kirk, or anything said with love. I want to add to Nancy's list, there was also a halting to the slush fund and the tax immunity deal. So another good piece of good news in the recent days. Who knows where that will end up. I love being here at Accotink, I love having a beautiful friendship with Rev Lev. To folks who are new here, wanted to let you know that we've been doing this series over this past year, months that have had fifth Sundays. We've typically been swapping. This is the last fifth Sunday of this church year, and so I'm really happy to be here, seeing so many familiar faces, and I'm hoping that we get to do this again next year. So. I'm sorry for, you've already lit in this.
It's a big wick.
I'm so excited that I'm here on the Pride Picnic Day, and it gave me an opportunity to wear my new favorite stole, which is in the trans pride flag colors. I wear it because of, in memory of a dear friend who is no longer with us, and in honor of a very special child in my life who recently reintroduced herself to me. So I'm wearing that today to celebrate Pride with you and in honor of them. Now let's light our chalice together. As Nancy lights our chalice, I'll share these words, which come from our Unitarian Universalist values and covenants. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. As an expression of the value of pluralism, we celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our faith and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared value of pluralism. I'm sorry, folks. Where are we? Let's see. Let's start with this slide again. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Thank you for reading along with me. I was not prepared for that, so thank you for doing it. I'm glad we did it together.
My name is Michelle Anderson. I use the pronouns she and her, and I'm your Children and Youth Spiritual Development Director. I'm so excited to see all of you here this morning. So usually during the Time for All Ages, we tell a story. But today, because of the message that Reverend Kirk is speaking about later, we're going to do a breathing exercise. Now downstairs, we call these centering exercises because they help us come to the center of who we are. No matter what is happening around in our world, if we can find our own center, we can be okay. And so I teach a different centering exercise almost each week, and this is one of the ones that we've done downstairs. So you get an example of what we're doing. And families, if you would like to know all of the ones that we've been learning, at the bottom of my family newsletter is a link to the spiritual practices that we've been doing downstairs all church year long. If you don't want to have to type in all of the link, just catch the online version of this, which is located on the website. Okay, so here we are. Let's start by sitting quietly in a position that is comfortable for you. Today, we're going to pretend that we have a drink with a straw. We also are going to pretend that we have a candle. Curve your hand around as if you're holding your drink in a glass with a straw. Purse your lips as if you're drinking from the straw, and then inhale. Now hold your index finger up on your other hand. You're going to pretend this is a candle. Very carefully blow so that the flame flickers but does not go out. Let's do it again. Pull air in through the straw. Slowly and carefully blow on the candle. Imagine the flame flickering. And again, air in through the straw. And make the candle flame flicker. One last time. In through the straw. And make your candle flame flicker. Then you can blow it out. Great. Thank you for exploring with me.
Our reading this morning comes from Unitarian Universalist poet and minister Reverend Lynn Unger. "Breathe," said the wind. "How can I breathe at a time like this when the air is full of the smoke of burning tires, burning lives?" "Just breathe," the wind insisted. "That's easy for you to say if the weight of injustice is not wrapped around your throat, cutting off all air. I need you to breathe. I need you to breathe. Don't tell me to be calm when there are so many reasons to be angry, so much cause for despair. I didn't say be calm," said the wind. "I said to breathe. We're going to need a lot of air to make this hurricane together." There are moments when the weight of everything makes it difficult for us to know what to do next. Not difficult in the ordinary sense of a full calendar or a complicated decision, difficult in a much more profound way. The kind of difficult where you sit down to think and the thinking itself won't come, where you know something is being asked of you and you cannot quite locate what it is, where the world feels like it is moving too fast in too many directions at once, and when you're standing in the middle of it trying to remember who you are and what you need and what you believe. I think a lot of us are living in that feeling right now. I know I have been for months, if not years now. World events, local events, personal challenges, work, family responsibilities, relationships, all competing for our attention, pleading for us to tend to them in an escalating arms race of urgency. There have been moments when I realize I've lost myself in the stories and the crises. Moments when I realize my brain is off on an adventure or in a mental wrestling match, and I'm barely connected to my body, let alone my heart. Moments when I notice my breathing is short and shallow. Moments when I realize I may have been holding my breath. Our reading this morning comes from that place. The human in Lynn Unger's poem is overwhelmed. They're holding their breath. The poem does not offer a solution. It does not promise things will get easier or that the smoke will clear. Instead, the wind simply and tenderly and persistently asks for one thing. I need you to breathe. Not because everything is fine, not because the reasons for anger and grief and despair are not real, but because the wind knows something we sometimes forget when we're in the middle of all these things. That breath and that pause, that act of pausing, is the beginning of possibility. When we breathe, something becomes possible that wasn't possible a moment before. We can return. Not return as in going backwards, not as a retreat into some simpler or safer version of the past, but return in a sense of reorientation, of finding that place that we never actually left. The breath offers us a return to our bodies, our hearts, the values and commitments and visions that were there before the anxiety arrived, and that will be there after the anxiety passes. Anxiety and urgency narrow our reality. They hamper our creativity, and that is what they are designed to do. They prepare us to respond quickly, reactively, sometimes out of control, and in genuine danger, that narrowing can save a life. But most of us are not in acute danger most of the time, though many people are. And it's important to acknowledge that some people live in bodies or carry identities that are regularly threatened, dismissed, or targeted in ways that others are not. Though even when we are not in acute danger, we are often living in a state of chronic overwhelm. And chronic overwhelm is different than acute danger. It does keep us in a posture of pouncing, a tense, reactive, exhausted space, when what we actually need is to expand our perspective, to relax our bodies, and to enter a posture of adaptive response. So a breath or a pause can stabilize us. A pause can help us find the solid ground beneath us. Sometimes even the briefest pause, a single breath, is enough, but sometimes one breath is not enough. Sometimes we need to breathe for a while. Sometimes we need to breathe for a long time, and this matters because the overwhelm is real. And sometimes what the moment requires is not a pause, but a deep rest. Not a deep breath, but a long one. And what happens from the outside, what looks from the outside like retreat, can be from the inside the most necessary and courageous thing a person can do. A break can look like hibernation, but it is actually restoration. What looks like stillness can be the hardest work, the slow, quiet labor of finding your way back to yourself when the overwhelm has taken you very far from home. That kind of pause is not weakness, it's wisdom. And it looks different for different people in different seasons. We do not all breathe at the same pace. We do not all return on the same timeline. Some of us need a moment and some of us need a month. Some of us need other people to hold space while we find our way back. And that too is part of what communities are for. The wind does not say, be calm. It does not say, ignore what is causing you pain. It certainly does not say, don't worry, be happy. It says, breathe. We're not being asked to make peace with what is wrong. We're not being asked to soften our anger or quiet our grief or pretend the reasons for despair are not real. The breath in the poem holds all of that, and it does not dismiss it. But what the breath does is create just enough space between the trigger and the response to remember who we are and what we know. And this is important because sometimes we do not need new information, and this can be hard for some of us Unitarian Universalists to understand, that we don't always need new information or a new analysis or a new plan. Sometimes we simply need to find our way back to what we already know, what we aspire to, what we want to be. And once we find that, to get back to the work of making it real. I'm not a sailor, but I do know that in rough seas, the horizon can be deceiving. It rises and falls with the waves. It disappears behind the weather. It can make you lost when conditions are changing quickly. The horizon can help you stay oriented, but it cannot tell you where to go next. For that, sailors rely on something more dependable, a compass, a chart, a star, a waypoint, experience, something that remains steady when everything else seems to be moving. And perhaps that's what our values are for. Not to tell us exactly what will happen next or how to behave, not to eliminate uncertainty, but to help us keep our bearings when we can no longer see very far ahead of ourselves. For each of us, that fixed point may be different. It may have a different name. It may be our deepest values. It may be the commitments we have made to one another. It may be the vision of the world we are trying to build. It may be the promises we made to ourselves long before this particular crisis arrived. The details matter less than the function. When we are overwhelmed, when the news cycle accelerates, when fear begins making decisions for us, we need something that helps us remember who we are. Because the truth is that we already know more than we think we do. We know that every person has worth. We know that communities are stronger when people belong. We know that compassion matters. We know that justice matters. We know that our lives are bound up with one another, and we know that fear is a poor architect for the future. So the challenge is not usually discovering new values. The challenge is returning to the ones we already hold. And so when we do not know what to do next, personally, politically, spiritually, or collectively, we can ask a different question. What do our values and shared commitments ask of us now? That question will not answer everything. It won't eliminate uncertainty. It will not provide a complete roadmap or a strategic plan, but it may reveal the next faithful step, or what activist Adrienne Marie Brown calls the next elegant step. It's not a massive leap. It's not a perfect plan, but the most faithful and accessible move available to us right now. A step that embraces what is real, what is possible, and what remains unknown, and moves toward the future anyway. I want to return to the poem one final time, to its final image, which I think may be the most important one. The wind does not end with stillness. It does not end with calm, with rest, or even with the quiet of a single breath finally found. It ends with the wind telling us that we need to breathe because we're going to need a lot of air to make this hurricane together. Not to survive a hurricane, or to endure it, or to wait for it to pass, but to make it. And in this reframing, we're not merely people standing in the path of a powerful force, but we're participants in creating a powerful force. Because a hurricane is not chaos. It is actually one of the most powerful and coordinated forces in nature. Thousands of elements moving together, building on one another, generating something none of them could produce alone. It is collective energy finding its form. And that is what we're being called towards. We're not finding our breath so that we can feel better, though feeling better is not nothing. We are finding our breath so that we can move faithfully and purposefully, so that we can build something, so that we can become a force for compassion, belonging, courage, and justice in a world that desperately needs all of these things. And this is what I want us to hold on to together today. We have values worth returning to. We have communities that have carried people through difficult seasons before and can do so again. We've inherited traditions of people who faced uncertainty, found their footing, and chose to act anyway. We are not the first people to live through turbulent times, and we will not be the last. So what matters is what we do with the breath we have been given. Anxiety would have us believe we're too small, too few, too overstretched, too divided by our differences, or diminished by our struggles. But anxiety is not a reliable narrator. It never has been. When we find our breath, when we return to what we know, we discover that we rediscover what the overwhelm had temporarily hidden from us. We already have what we need, and we are powerful, not in spite of this moment, but all the more for it. And this is exactly the kind of moment that communities like Accotink and Davies and so many others exist for, to help people remember who they are, to hold hope when hope is hard to find, to create belonging where isolation would otherwise win, to breathe together, and then to move together, and then to make something together that none of us could make alone. So let us return again to that pause, that breath, that inner knowing this week, today, in this very hour. Let us know what we know. Let us return to what we know is true. Let us return to our values, return to one another, and let us find our breath and then go. May it be so. Amen.
Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, the world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
Before I do, I have a habit where I can't let announcements end when they're supposed to end. I just want to, on behalf of ministers everywhere, I want to give special thanks to all the Board of Trustees members thinking about the annual meeting, all the work that lay leaders do to keep our congregations afloat. And so I hope all of you will thank them as you go through the next few weeks. And now, please rise in body or spirit to join in our closing words. As we extinguish our chalice, I invite you to join me in our community blessing, inspired by the words of David Bombaugh. This church is dedicated to the proposition that there is a unity beneath all our diversity. And by celebrating our differences, we grow together, honoring a journey that reaches beyond time, death, and space between the stars. We pause now in silent witness to this, our shared covenant. Now that we've gathered together in this welcoming and inclusive spiritual home, let us go out into the world inspired to share our values. May it be so. Amen.